So, yeah, it's Thursday morning, which means it's time for some craft and chill time. This is going to be extra chill today because I've got a bit of a migraine. So, you get some bun action and some glasses action. But we're still here, we're still working on stuff because that's what we do. We are still matching donations through the end of April to the Asian Americans Advancing Justice organization, the Atlanta chapter. The link is at the top of the screen. If you want to go make a donation and send us a picture, we'll match that donation. We're also donating 15% of our profits for the entire month of April to the same organization. So, April is almost over, so if you want to get in on that, let us know. Okay. I think that is good. So I think I've got the chat problem sorted out. I know it's a little crooked today, but we do what we can. I'm still playing around with my setup behind the scenes, but I have an idea of how to make that better. So hopefully all of that will even itself out, and it'll be awesome. And chat info while working on projects is always a fun time, even if it's just an hour at a time. I appreciate our time together. So today we've got our mask that we've been working on for the last couple of weeks, and all the pieces are together, almost all of them. And so this, there are a couple of spots where the glue didn't quite connect. I tried to fix it this morning, and it's the material, I think, because it's got like some of these little waves here, but that's okay because we're going to cover up these edges anyway. So I'm going to show y'all what it looks like on. I have to take my glasses off for it. So this is where we are right now. You can see it's a little bit big for my face. It's a little bit tall, but I have drawn in some lines here, so we're going to cut those, and that should help to trim it down a little bit for my face. So I'm going to do that first, and I just held it up in a mirror and sort of guessed where I think the line should be. Very scientific. So, got my handy dandy X-Acto blade, and we're going to make this cut and see how this works out for us. And of course, the nice thing is that since this is sort of a original design, we're not trying to copy another character or, portray somebody else's artwork, that if we make some sort of mistake or change our minds, then we just change our minds. So that is nice and less stressful than making a mistake for something that you're trying to replicate, which I also enjoy doing. That's a fun challenge for me, to take something that's 2D and turn it into something that is 3D in the universe, if you will. So I'm just going real slow with my knife here because of the curves. I want to make sure that I get it just right. I almost got it. All right. So here's our layers of foam that we cut off. All right. We'll clean that up just a little bit. We can take a little bit of sandpaper and manually smooth out some of those rough edges. So let's see if this was enough or too much. It's still pretty tall, but we could go a little bit, take it down a little bit further. Right there. So I just sort of put my fingernail into the foam because I know that it will leave that indentation, and then I can work with it from there. So let's grab our gel pen. And I've got my indentation right here, so that's where I want my low point to be. We'll just do it just like that. And then the fun part is trying to make it match the other side. Actually, I think what I'm gonna do, because it's such a weird shape, I'm gonna cut this side out first, and then we can trace it, and then they'll match. All right, so here's our little triangle. So we want it to match the other side. So we're gonna flip it. Try lining it as best we can. There we go. Set that off to the side and look at this side. Alright, so you might have noticed we've got this little bit of, this is the back piece here, and there's a little bit of the plastic as well. I do want to cut all that for me personally. It's actually a pretty cool effect to give that sort of extra dimension there, but it's gonna bug me if it's right below my eyes like that, so. Alright. Alright. Let's see if that makes it more comfy. There we go. Got a little bit of a Sub-Zero vibe going on there, but I like it. All right, so what I did, so I had some of these lying around from making fabric face masks, and this is just a nose strip to make it moldable. So if you have a face mask that has the place where you can shape the nose, this is what's inside of it. So this one has a little sticky back. So I'm going to actually peel that off and stick it on the inside, the underside of this. So let me, before I do that, I'm going to grab some sandpaper and we're going to smooth out the top of the edges that we just cut, and then I'll put that on there. And we'll get to the next one. So this is a 200 grit sandpaper. You just cut a small piece out to use for projects like this. So you can use, just like we used the embroidery tool last week, you can use hand sandpaper as well. And the higher the number, the finer the grit. It's how many per inch or centimeter or something. I'm not sure what the measurement is, but bigger numbers are for finer grit. So using a 200 on foam is about my sweet spot for detail, because it's just rough enough that it will smooth things out, but it's not so rough that it will make new problems. Now, if you're trying to distress the foam or something like that, if it might go with a little bit of a lower grit, I would advise caution now, because the way the foam is constructed and stuff, it can only take so much of the sanding before it starts chunking off. That's the technical term. Alright, so that's made it nice and smooth now. It's still a little rough, but we do have a bunch of trim options, and we may be able to encase some of those slightly rough edges with some trim. So first, we're going to put our nose wire in there. And watch me struggle with peeling off a piece of paper. I always have the worst time getting the paper off the back of this. There it is. All right. Now this is going to be hidden in the clear by the foam that's on top already. So we don't have to worry about it showing through. So what I want to make sure is that it is as centered as I can get it. That looks pretty centered there. And then I'm just going to push down the sticky bit. Like so. Now that'll give us some extra moldability, basically. And gives it just a little bit more of a molded shape. Now, that did pull out my, so it may require some re-engineering. This is not part of the original design. This is meant to be a bit more rounded. So, there we go. Do that. So, we'll touch that up with some glue. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be fine. So, now that we've got it basically all put together, the next thing that we want to do is put a nice base coat on here. So I have been recently using Gesso as my primer before I put actual paint on it. And let me start over. So foam absorbs, right? It's got, the cells are sort of open. It's sort of like working with fabric that, most things are porous to varying degrees. But if you're painting something that's metal, it's going to take the paint pretty well without you having to do a lot of prep work. Whereas something like the foam, fabric, Worbla, all these things are more porous. So they require a primer coat or multiple coats. So what I usually do, and it depends on the project, but I use Plastidip a lot as my primer, especially if I'm doing multimedia. So if I'm using foam and Worbla, for example, that I will use Plastidip as my primer because it will give everything the same sort of smooth finish. When I made the Marvin helmet, I used paper mache to go on top of the helmet, so it would be this nice smooth non-earth sort of thing. And I had used Gesso, on top of the paper mache because of the paper and the Plastidip just it wasn't smooth enough. I wanted this to look like some sort of otherworldly thing. So I started using Gesso on all my foam projects and found I really liked the results that it was giving me as a base for painting. So especially things that need brush strokes or to look like they have it. So like when I'm doing the horns, that I will use a base coat of Gesso because then I can go in with any brush strokes when I'm dry brushing it to put the details on top. So I was hoping this would dry a little bit faster, but that's all right. We'll keep an eye on it. It smells like nail polish remover. I'm sure it's fine. All right, so now that we've got those, since I decided that I wanted to be different. All right. So for me, I have found the smoothest application of the gesso is with a foam brush. I did try it with my silicone brushes, and it just didn't give me the coverage that I wanted. So this is the gesso that I am currently using. It's the Liquitex brand of gesso, and it is a acrylic medium because it's an acrylic kind of paint. That's all that that means. There are lots of other brands. I just happen to like Liquitex. I'm familiar with them and how the products work. So that's what that is. So we'll start, yeah, because I didn't bring any painter's tape in here. So I'm just going to start here on the edges. So I'm not terribly worried about the vinyl. I'm going to be working to keep my brush strokes away from the insides, but since we plan to cover the edges anyway, it's okay if those get gesso on them. One of the other nice things about gesso is it's water soluble, so if you spill it on your clothes, that as long as it's still damp, you can get it out with a damp paper towel or a color fast towel, something that's not going to transfer color onto your clothes. Another way to sort of seal the foam before you paint it, typically, is to hit it with a heat gun. I did not do that. I should have before I cut it, but I didn't because I forgot. And I will get out a smaller brush to do the underside so that all foam surfaces have paint on them. Because when we go back to put our actual color on top, we're going to want all that. And I'm using just the angled tip of the foam brush to get into some of these places. we'll go back over it with another layer or two of gesso, so it is okay that we don't have 100% perfect coverage right now. Mostly just want to make sure that we get it on there. And since we plan to put some scripture in there, good morning. It's okay that it still is red on the inside. That's where the vinyl is on top. Already looking like a thing, and not just a weird collection of colors. Alright, so I'm gonna grab a smaller brush. And myself a little paint pot here. The other thing that the gesso does, because it's acrylic, that it can fill in some of these imperfections. So, like the seam here in the middle, you can fill that in with acrylic paint to a certain extent. Yeah, this is a lot smaller than what I've been painting recently, so smaller brush has definitely given me some more control. So I don't know if y'all can see all of these little bubbles. Look like little holes. I don't know if that shows through at all. But anyway, that problem is solved by heating it up before you cut it, or heating it after you cut it. But that's okay. We're here to have a good time and paint stuff. Trying really hard not to get paint on my clothes. We'll see how that goes for me. Yeah, this is one of the spots where the glue didn't quite stick, so we'll see. We'll see. Oh, that looks pretty good. Just like brushing your teeth, you gotta get every side. No, you probably don't have to paint the back. That's probably okay. The reason that we don't paint the pieces before we put them together is, first of all, you might need to move pieces around and then you might pull up paint. And the other thing is that paint and glue sometimes don't react great together. So if we glue everything together first and let the glue dry and then paint it afterwards, you don't have the unknown of, what if you get glue on something and it turns your color to like a yellow set or something like that. So a lot of glues will do that after a while. I mean, not immediately, but that it can change what the finished project looks like. Yeah, this nose strip isn't sticking too well, so I might take it out. We'll see. You can also use a heat gun to heat it up slightly and then stick it on your face. Especially if you're not doing the vinyl piece in the middle. I don't know how the vinyl would react to that heat. Also, because of my migraine, I'm trying to avoid loud noises, and the heat gun is definitely loud. See, our second layer of gesso over here, all ready. Much more of a solid color. And this thinner craft foam is, something that you would pick up in your art supply store or, something like that, that really is intended for children's crafts. So it does take paint very nicely. I don't know if y'all can see that the number is still showing through on this chin piece. So we're going to see if 2 layers of gesso will cover that number, or if we're going to have to go 1. probably need a third layer, but we'll see. We'll see how it looks when it dries. And this pattern is from R31 Studios. You can find them on Facebook or on the general internet at r31studios.com. A very cool cosplayer out of New Zealand that makes stuff and then makes patterns of the stuff and then puts the patterns online for other folks to use. They also do like tips and tricks. They have some really neat techniques for things like getting texture onto your foam. And so, yeah, definitely recommend checking them out. If you would like to make your own things out of foam. Alright, so this is our second layer of gesso here, and it's doing pretty good. We'll probably need a third full layer to get some nice even coverage, but that is okay. So, I mean, if you sat and had the gesso super close to your face all day, maybe it is an acrylic paint. It is not as concerning as working with like oil paints. And the concern with the oil paints is because of the way you clean oil paints. And I don't know if that is still true or not, but ventilation is always a thing to pay attention to. This is a low odor kind of thing if you're sensitive to smells and stuff like that. I also would wait for paint and glue to dry completely, give it a good 24, 48 hours before wearing it for any length of time. I am definitely a procrastinator, but the one thing that I won't procrastinate on is the costuming. If I'm throwing together something at the last minute out of my closet, that's one thing. But like painting or detailing or stuff like that, I don't wait till the last minute for that. If it doesn't get painted, then it doesn't get worn. I wouldn't sit inside, you know, a small space like a box or a refrigerator to paint it. But this is like a 10 by 10 room, maybe a little bit smaller than that. And yeah, I mean, I can smell it, but I'm overly sensitive to smells right now. So yeah, there is our 2 layers of gesso on our mask, and it's looking pretty nice. Yeah, I think I'll do a 3rd layer, and that should be good for our base layer. Then we have to decide what color we want to paint it. So typical colors are, of course, black or gray, maybe a silver. We could also do a, you know, black base and then have accent colors on it. The other things that I have brought, I'm just going to set this aside to dry. That's the other thing. If you've got a layer of paint that's still kind of damp, if you put that 2nd layer on, it's going to smush around all the under layers, and then you're going to have to just go do it again. So let it dry all the way first. It doesn't take long to dry, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. But give it time to do its thing. So, very excited for next time. We have a couple of options for decorations. And yes, I use only technical terms, and schmoosh is definitely a technical term. Can confirm. I went to art school. Okay, I went to a liberal arts college, and my degrees were in art, so it's not really art school, but it's sort of. Anyway, I'm here for all your technical terminology. So this is foam clay. This brand is called Foam Mo. There are a bunch of different brands out there, and it is like regular clay, except foam. So I will show you. This is a specific. So it has to stay in a sealed container. So it comes in this plastic bag inside this plastic container. So I just leave the plastic bag in there and make sure to squish all the air out. Use another technical term for Janity there, if you're keeping notes. So it's a little bit damp, and it's supposed to be. And so basically the way that this works is it's like moldable foam. So stick that back in here. So it sort of looks like, if y'all ever use those gray erasers, it kind of looks like that, but the consistency is much more, it's not rubbery. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It's actually a very unique texture that it's got. So you can push it into molds, so like silicone molds to make things. You can also mold it just like regular clay. So if I want to make a little, I don't know what. You can also use it. One of the things I really like using it for is to fill in foam seams, because you can spread it super thin and then it's almost like caulking, except with foam. So here is a little doodad. So when this dries, I can glue it on to a project. And if it starts to dry out while you're working on it, you can get you a little bit of water, and then it continues to be malleable and let you sort of work with it. So if we wanted to make a bunch of little details, we could do that. And then just like regular clay, that you can move it around and really get some really neat stuff with it. And this is something that is, again, it's 24 hours to dry completely. So you'd have to let it dry before you painted it. But here we go. just to show y'all how thin this material can really get. That is about 4 inches that I've rolled it out to. And then go through here and press it flat. It does have, I think they're little balls of silica to keep it from drying out. Yes, if it's larger and thicker pieces, they do need longer to dry. I have read that you can stick it in the freezer to accelerate the drying process, but that's not something I've actually tried. So there's a thin piece without even trying to put it into any sort of crevices or anything like that. So it's a medium that I'm still learning about and how to use effectively. But I do really like it for filling gaps in film projects. And yeah, I don't have any molds down here. No, they're all upstairs with food. But we'll make. That's true. Or do it at night so you can just go to bed and then and then it's dry in the morning. We'll make ourselves a little tiny mustache. And because again, we can use it like clay, but you can use clay techniques to put accents in there. So I'm using the blunt side of the penknife to put tiny little ridges in there. So now our tiny mustache has little tiny hairs on it. So that's foam clay. That's super fun. I have a ton of trim that we can play around with and figure out what is going to look fun and cool on this mask that we're making. So I have big pieces of fabric trim. I've got some rope because who needs rope? Everybody does. I expect nothing less from you. That sounds like an accurate story. This is Warpla, which I haven't made anything with in a while. It comes in sheets. I mean, bigger sheets than this. This is some scraps. And they used to. It's the same material that they used to make shoes, like the hard pieces in the backs of your shoes. And so now there's a whole industry around just for cosplayers. But it's got this shiny side, and then it's a rough side. So for making this mask, if I wasn't streaming it, the amount of time that it would take me would be, not counting for drying time, but just construction and everything else. I'd probably say 3 or 4 hours to get it all done. Now you have to wait for the glue to dry and you have to wait for paint to dry, but if I were doing a full build, that while I was working on the mask, while the glue is drying on that, then I'd go work on something else, like sewing together clothes or putting together another piece, like a helmet or armor or whatever. But streaming does slow stuff down, which is okay. Um, and some things is we're like learning as we go and figuring out processes and stuff like that. But I am in good company, and that is what's important. Show you all the rest of my trim stash here. I've got feathers. I have these, which they're called iron-on studs. So they're supposed to go on clothes, and they've got a little bit of a tacky back on there. And you put it on something, and then you put your iron on top of it, and it melts it. I have this, which I think is supposed to be for jewelry, but who could never know? I have, so this was a piece of trim that I got. I was making a costume that needed this trim, but in single strips. So I cut it up into a long single piece that I could then cut. It's connected with tiny pieces of plastic. So I've got the one long piece, and then the rest of the piece that I cut out. Be fabulous. I've got some fringe. I've got some rainbow trim left over from a Doctor Who coat that I made. And this is my favorite secret weapon right now. This is aquarium tubing. But it's got such a great, like, futuristic kind of look to it. I actually made a half jacket. It's like a bolero style jacket, which means that it only comes down basically to the top of your ribs. It was in fact a 13 cosplay, not for me, it was a commission, but it was the perfect trim for a 13th Doctor cosplay, and it was a lot of fun to put that together. So this is when being a bit of a pack rat comes in handy. I have some of this little, like, leather trim that was left over from, it's not really leather, but it looks like it, and all sorts of things. And then, because I don't really throw anything away, I have a whole container of plastic things. So, for example, when I empty a bobbin on my embroidery machine, it leaves behind this plastic bobbin. Now you can refill them, but I still have a whole box of bobbins. So, you never know when I might need a bobbin accessorized piece. So I did a test tube for a commission, and I've listed them now on the Etsy store, but the way that I use them, I don't use the caps, and they're these little plastic caps, which might be a really neat, riveting detail. So, just some stuff that I've got lying around. And then I've also got some LED wires, like some big Christmas LED things. And I've got some little ones. Also, more rainbow unicorn gear, because why not? So, y'all think about what we should decorate our mask with for next week. I'll get enough layers of gesso on there that will be good to go to put whatever paint we want to put on there, and figure out how we want our mask to look, and put our finishing touches on it, and then we'll attach straps so that it can be worn, and then y'all will have really helped me to make this mask. And then coming up, I do have I'm looking into a commission right now. I'm doing some research, so that may come to fruition, which would be super fun. And it's another foam piece. And yeah, other than that, we're cruising towards our COVID vaccination end date. So maybe looking at conventions this year, maybe not until next year. We're still deciding on how that's going to go. But definitely excited that other people are excited to get back out there and go to conventions. Um, you can come hang out with me and some awesome folks on Tuesday nights at the Shadowrun Missions Actual Play with Rem Alternus at twitch.tv/Master of Rem. Yes, you can find us all over the internet at the Geek Forge. We have an Etsy store. We've got a website, thegeekforge.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Oh, sort of. I'm really bad at TikTok. I mostly just watch other people's videos, but I'm trying. And yes. And also, we are still matching donations through the end of April of 2021. And for the Asian Americans Advancing Justice Initiative here in Atlanta. And 15% of our profits are also going to that organization. If you make a donation, send me a picture of the donation amount and the organization, like the logo or confirmation, and we will match it up to $250 through the end of the month. Yeah, so that is all I got. And thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. It's always a good time to listen to some chill music and do some crafting with my good friends. So I love you all, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.